2 weeks, 32 judicial vacancies and over 70 candidates. The Judicial Service Commission will today begin a marathon session in order to fill those vacancies at the country's courts. The COVID-19 pandemic impacting the Commission's plans to hold interviews throughout 2020, and as a result, it's caused a backlog. For the first time, they'll be holding the hearings with a virtual component. Let's unpack the story now. We're joined by Newzroom Afrika's news editor, Dianne Hawker, who will take us through how it'll work. Good morning, Dianne. It's great to see you, albeit virtually. And this is how at least some of these interviews will be conducted as the country looks to fill those 32 judicial vacancies. I want to, for the purposes of our conversation, talk about the 2 vacancies in the Constitutional Court. There were originally 10 candidates for these 2 vacancies. There are now 9. And just reading up on, what it takes to be a Constitutional Court justice, experts saying you need a range and depth of experience from family law to commercial law to labor law.
Yes, absolutely, Michelle. Good morning to you and good morning to our viewers. It really is a serious undertaking that the Judicial Service Commission is going to go through over these next 2 weeks. And as you correctly state, they're starting with the Constitutional Court vacancies. Now, those are 2 vacancies that were left by 2 judges who retired, Judge Furneman as well as Judge Cameron, who recently retired, and one of which was meant to actually have been filled last year, but then didn't take place because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's essentially a backlog in filling those vacancies. When it comes to the Constitutional Court vacancies, the Constitutional Court, in fact, is now the last court of instance for all cases in the country, not only constitutional matters, as it was in the past. So previously, the Supreme Court of Appeal would have been the last place that some cases would go, but now they can go all the way to the Constitutional Court. And this means that in addition to a strong understanding of constitutional law, the judges really need to understand a variety of issues. And what they do try to do is make sure that they've got a good mix on the bench, in fact, that they've got, people with criminal law experience, people who have commercial law experience, just the whole bag to ensure that the Constitutional Court is appropriately representative.
And you can see that in those 9 candidates that remain. Among them, there's a human rights lawyer, there's a former military judge, and a deputy judge president. Shall we begin there and look a bit closer at some of those 9 candidates? And perhaps let's begin with Judge Aubrey Ledwaba, currently serving as an active judge on the Supreme Court of Appeal. And there's some writing around Judge Aubrey Ledwaba on some of the past things he's said about what it takes to be a part of the judiciary. I want to just read you this one excerpt from a 2015 speech, and I'm sure all of these things will come up. The whole history of the judge of the candidate will come up as these interviews take place. His speech was entitled "Reflections on Acting, What is Required of Acting Judges." He says, "Make sure that you've paid your bond. This is serious, guys, because it says one thing. When you're on the bench, you are not going to sign your check as you used to when you were an advocate or an attorney, and the money is not good there." Perhaps him just talking about the kind of commitment it does take.
I talk about how a judicial is really, it's public service. I think a lot of people might think that, when you join the bench, you might be making an extreme amounts of money. Of course, judges are not poor, but they are not making the kind of money that some in the advocacy profession could make by charging hourly rates. Judicial salaries are set at certain amounts for certain positions. So, for example, the Chief Justice's last amount that was set is about 2.8 million per annum, including his various
how should I say, that includes the salary as well as the various benefits that he has. And then you'd go down to a normal judge at a normal level, such as the High Court Division, for example, and that judge would be sitting at a package of about 1.8 million rand a year. So within the legal profession, that those kind of salary ranges might not be as much as what some people might have experienced in the advocacy profession. However, when it comes to the Constitutional Court vacancies, most of those who are applying are actually sitting judges already. There's only one candidate who is not a sitting judge, and that's Advocate Alan Dodson. He is a human rights advocate, and he is the only candidate who's not a sitting judge. The other judges are either judges at the Supreme Court of Appeal or at High Court level. And as you pointed out, they all have varying areas of expertise. Some of our viewers might remember Jody Collipin, who is a High Court judge. He used to be the Human Rights Commissioner in South Africa a few years ago. And then you also have, like you mentioned, Judge Ledwaba. He is actually the one of the deputy judge presidents at the Gauteng High Court, but he's been acting at the Supreme Court of Appeal for some time. And they will go and they will join the Constitutional Court bench, which is missing two candidates. Interestingly, Michelle, it's important to note that, in fact, this year the Constitutional Court is going to change quite drastically, because the Chief Justice will leave the court later on this year, along with a few other judges who were appointed in the same year as he was. And this is because the Con Court has a limited period that judges can serve.
Yeah. Dianne, I want to just talk about, the intersection between politics and law. It's a story that's been unfolding, in the wake of the Chief Justice writing to former President Jacob Zuma, saying that he should submit arguments around what his sentence should be. Some people calling it quite politically astute of the Chief Justice to do so. Judge Ledwaba, that you and I were just talking about now, he ruled in the case involving the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and the Public Protector, resulting in the sealing of those CR17 campaign records. A Durban High Court judge, Dianne Pillay, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she's also talked about this growing intersection between politics and law. She's another interesting candidate in terms of these two positions that are open in the Constitutional Court.
Yes, absolutely, Michelle. When mentioning to the I think that when the Commission actually gets into the detail of some of the previous judgments, you will find that there is going to be quite a lot of discussion about these judgments actually being quite critical judgments, both for the country but also for the political landscape. And I think that's also why on the Judicial Service Commission, in addition to lawyers, you actually also have some candidates or some commissioners who originate in Parliament. So there are members of the Commission who are from the National Assembly and some from the NCOP. And it's often those commissioners who asked about these kind of political issues that come up in judgments. There are a number of judges who have ruled on issues relating to, party politics, but as well as other issues like, for example, the Derek Hanekom Jacob Zuma spat over the tweet that was issued. That was one of the judgments, a notable judgment that may come up in this sitting. But it is also important to note that it won't only veer into the political terrain. There will be questions, for example, for those who are in leadership positions about what kind of vision they might have for the court that they are going to. There will be questions about what the meaning of the justice system is and what the meaning of the Constitution is and how these judges interpret that, especially those who will be at the Constitutional Court, Michelle.
Yeah, just a quick one, Dianne. Judge David Underhalter, and I think even if you don't follow legalese very, very closely, you may well know that he's considered in many ways legal royalty in the country. His father, Jack Underhalter, a renowned lawyer who represented political prisoners during the apartheid period.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Michelle, Judge David Underhalter is think he's got the serving experience of being on the bench as compared to the other candidates. He's got about 3 years on the bench, whereas the other candidates, some have as much as 12 years serving at high court level or at other levels. So, however, he does have a rich background as a lawyer. He lectured law at Wits University. He's worked as a constitutional law expert previously. So he does have a very strong legal background generally. However, I do think that it may be a challenge for him competing with people who've had a longer period on the bench, especially some who've had an opportunity to serve in an acting capacity at the Constitutional Court, because that is one of the issues that they do tend to speak about, is how much time a particular...
All right, it appears we've lost our connection, what was a shaky connection, with our news editor, Dianne Hawker, but I think you get the gist of the issues there around Judge David Underhalter. We're unpacking the story around the Judicial Service Commission this week meeting to interview candidates for judicial appointments. These candidates we were talking about are among the 9 candidates to be appointed to 2 positions in the Constitutional Court. A big developing story, certainly, in our country.